Again, I just want to thank you so much for your time today. My name is, let's start with introduction a little bit. My name is Camilla. I am an international student from Italy, currently in New York, studying at St. John's University, completing my second master's in entrepreneurship and innovation. And all my degrees were actually from St. John's University.
Cool. Um, Hi, my name's Linda. I'm currently a first year grad student, and my major is also entrepreneurship and innovation. And I'm a student athlete, and I'm excited for this interview. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm currently in my second year of my MBA. I'm currently living in Mexico right now.
Very cool. Probably quite a bit
Um,
warmer down there than it is here, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, it's a lot warmer.
Yeah.
So we wanted to see if you could give us a little bit of background information on yourself.
Yeah. So I guess a little bit about me. So I have grown up in Iowa uh, pretty much my whole life. I started traveling when I was really young. So I was kind of exposed to some of those, exposed to developing countries, some of those global challenges that we face, and was always really interested in kind of food and understanding some of those inequalities and why people in other countries have access to less resources than we do here in the US. So that kind of led to going to Iowa State University, and I majored in a program called Global Resource Systems. It's pretty similar to international development, but really focusing on understanding kind of how all those different sectors, political, environmental, social, all of those interact, and how does it lead to countries kind of being developed or not developed. So that's super interesting. And my sophomore year, while I was there, I co-founded Kinosol with three other students at Iowa State University. So yeah, I guess a little bit on Kinosol. When we started, we didn't necessarily think it would turn into a full-time business. It was kind of just one of those side projects we did outside of class. We had entered this competition with the opportunity to end up in Portugal for a couple weeks, going through a startup boot camp, pitching on stage, and we were like, that sounds like a really cool opportunity. It was a good way to kind of put some of the things we had experienced in our travels to work and start really diving into the issues around food and inequality. And so that's kind of where we started, where we developed a solar food dehydrator. We spent the first few years kind of working on prototyping, really understanding some of those, you know, cultural challenges that we face. How does it work in different environments, different climates, different regions? And then we focused really in on working in Uganda with a lot of our partners there. So we kind of took more of a grassroots approach, going community by community, trying to be the most sustainable as possible and really help those communities um, improve their overall food security and just overall well-being. And then in 2019, we decided to expand, realizing that a lot of the communities we were working with were dealing with other challenges besides just food security. So we felt like it was a really good way for us to kind of extend the partnerships that we had in those communities and help further their overall development. So we launched a social impact trip program. So it was a way for students here in the US to put some of the skill sets they had to use, kind of everything they were learning in their classes, and go over and work with some of our partners. So working with women's groups, nonprofits, getting kind of a behind the scenes look at Kinosol and understanding, what does it take to launch a product in a developing country, but then also getting to serve as business consultants to some of our community partners. So it was a really cool way to kind of give back and for everyone to learn. Um, and then that was going really well. And then COVID hit. And so kind of all of that got put on hold. We tried to adapt. We launched a social entrepreneurship online course. We tried to do a lot of our community training programs virtually, and just honestly didn't really have a lot of good traction or success with that. So right now, everything with Kinosol is basically on pause until we kind of have a better understanding of where the direction of travel and where the direction of this world is headed. So in a very short nutshell, that is kind of Kinosol and where we're at.
It's really interesting how you all got started.
Yeah, it was a really cool opportunity. I would encourage you all to kind of check it out. It's called the Thought for Food Challenge. Um, they focus on millennials and so young people, and kind of, I think what I really liked is the perspective of, you don't have to have all of these degrees or have 10 or 15 years of experience working in the field in order to make a difference. So it's really cool to see young people our age actually starting companies, creating solutions to problems, and actually taking them all the way from idea to proof of concept and actually in the hands of users. So it's a really cool way to kind of think about entrepreneurship and really be problem focused.
And so I was reading on the website that kind of one of the products that's mostly used is the dehydrator, correct? Like
Yeah.
how did you all come up with that idea? Like what was the innovation or the business innovation to come up with that idea?
Yeah, so all of us had done quite a bit of traveling and we'd seen a lot of the similar issues around food going to waste. So a lot of smallholder farmers produce a lot of their products, um, but in a lot of the rural communities, there's a lot of issues with access to markets and access to information about markets. And then a lot of the food that's being produced is so seasonal. So it all kind of comes into harvest at once. So a lot of times you see farmers actually just leaving their food in the fields and it going to waste because it's actually the most economical decision. They actually lose money during that, like harvesting, transporting to market because the prices are so low. So they just can't really make any money with it. And so we not only wanted to solve the problem of, you know, how do we create something that's value added, but then how do we also address the seasonality of these crops where, you maybe only have mangoes in season for 3 months out of the year. But so much of that perishable crop is full of vitamins and nutrients. And so if we can also kind of touch on some of those broader health implications. So we kind of started thinking and looking, how do we what else is kind of out there, what's being done to address some of these food waste concerns. And I think one of our meetings, one of the co-founders had been kind of researching on Pinterest and found a solar food dehydrator that was made out of a pizza box. And we were like, well, if someone can like make this out of a pizza box, like, and actually use it, and we knew dehydration was a huge method that was used, especially for grains and beans. I mean, here in Iowa, we dry grains and beans all the time, and a lot of farmers are used to that. So why couldn't we apply that technology to something that's more perishable, like fruits and vegetables, and really focus on those foods that are high in nutrient content? Um, and so, kind of seeing that like it could be something that could be really simple to make. Lo and behold, not quite as simple as we thought it would be. Lots of learning along the way in terms of manufacturing and how do you actually build a product. But that's kind of where we got our early start, and we're a little bit, I guess, naive in that sense of thinking that, you know, we're for college students. None of us had any sort of technical background. We're engineers, weren't food scientists, but decided that we were going to go ahead and build this. Thankfully, we had a lot of help from friends and family that were a little bit more experienced in like the carpentry, wood building, had a little bit more of that skill set than we did.
That's a really cool story, and I just wanted to ask like how you guys are able to fund your trips, and what kind of important partnerships that has got Kinosol to where you guys are now today. And obviously it sounds very like successful, and you guys had a lot of success, helping out a lot of people in Africa and Uganda. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty fortunate when we started still being in college. We bootstrapped it the entire way. So we did a lot of business plan competitions, pitch competitions, and that was pretty lucrative for us. So we got a lot of that early funding from there, which
Mhm.
allowed us to build our prototype, actually send units out, get them tested, actually travel over there and build partnerships on the ground. Um, so that was super nice. And I think while you're still in college, there's a lot more opportunities and a lot more free capital out there than kind of once you graduate. For some reason, there just seems to be a ton more business plan pitch competitions for college age students. So that's where we got a lot of the early funding. In terms of partnerships, we we have kind of a wide variety of partners that we work with. So a lot of our work on the ground is with local grassroots organizations. So a lot of women's groups, a lot of cooperatives, smaller nonprofits. And we found a lot of the local organizations there tend to have a much better grasp and integration within the local ecosystem. So they kind of know who's who. They can really help us figure out which people we should be talking to, which communities we should be working with. And so that's been really helpful. And that's really how we built out our entire infrastructure kind of in Uganda and taken that approach because we manufacture all of the products here in Iowa. So we're shipping everything over there and then having to kind of figure out how do we actually distribute it. And then also just how do we build relationships within these communities, and how do we go about incorporating that education component, which we found is really big. Like, so when we introduce the dehydrators, we do like a day-long community training. So we focus a lot on educating people about the importance of food preservation, doing a lot of taste testing, sampling around dried products. And then we also incorporate some basic business training in there so they can really use the technology as an income generation tool.
Mhm.
In terms of kind of like other partnerships that we work with our social impact trip program, we partner directly with universities, really focus kind of in that college of business space. So working with a lot of entrepreneurship professors, deans of the College of Business, study abroad coordinators. And that's been really cool because I think what we've seen is that entrepreneurship is kind of one of that fast growing expansion across universities. A lot of them are offering now undergraduate degrees, masters. And what's really cool is we're able to offer that really niche, unique experience where you're traveling to a developing country where there's not a ton of study abroad that goes to developing countries, but then you're also getting hands on experience. You're getting to not only work with us and help us do our community trainings, but you're also getting to put a lot of the skills you're learning in the classroom to use, and really make an impact in the local community. So it's a really unique intersection between hands-on learning and social entrepreneurship. I'm a firm believer that's really hard to teach entrepreneurship in a classroom. You have to learn by doing. And so this is kind of that's where we saw things going, and it's been a really unique experience working with not only universities and also the students. So it's been really cool to kind of see all of their learning while they're on the ground. So it feels really rewarding from that perspective.
When you were doing the projects, can you kind of like describe a high point or high points, like experiences you've had when working with the local communities?
Yeah, I mean, I love anytime we can be over there. Everyone there is just they're just wonderful. Like the communities are always so welcoming. It's really great to kind of see their excitement around the technology because they can see the impact that it's going to have for them and their families. Where it really does increase their annual food supply. They're able to feed their children healthy foods and help kind of improve their overall health and wellness. And then they're also able to generate additional income. So it's really rewarding to actually see all of their excitement and to know that everything we're doing um, really does have an impact. I think in terms of low points, um, you kind of have to adjust to understanding what time in Africa really means. Things move significantly slower, which I think from our perspective, and especially in like the startup world, you're trying to go as quickly as you possibly can. And so I think when we started, I think we were going into it with that mindset. And so sometimes it was really easy to get frustrated and understanding that, we thought this pilot project was only going to take, a month, and it ends up being 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, however long it ends up taking. But I think in the long run, that actually was super beneficial for us because so much of culture there is based on relationships and actually taking the time to build those relationships. So there'd be so many meetings we go into, and a good chunk of the meeting is just spent on like conversing about like how is your family, how are you doing, and it's like kind of that general topics about like getting to know each other instead of necessarily diving straight into business talk, where I think that's what we tend to do here in the US. um, and I think in the long run actually taking that approach has been much more beneficial for us. So that's the approach we've taken not only with the partners that we work with in Uganda, but now the partners that we work with here in the US and the universities we work with. And I think just having that people first mindset, um, it, I don't know, it just increases, I think, the relationship you can build. So the partners that we work with at the university, and universities move really, really slow. So that's been also really good because we understand that timeline is going to be slow, but that doesn't mean that we can't work with you and help you in the short term. So I think we've always kind of taken that approach of people first and kind of that give first mentality of like, we want to help you because ultimately our goal is to really help equip smallholder farmers so that they can be food secure. And we also want to increase the number of social entrepreneurs. So we know that tackling food insecurity isn't something we can do by ourselves as a company. It doesn't matter how big our company gets. It's going to take a whole bunch of people around the world to make it happen. And so if we can show other students and build those relationships with universities and help educate them, I think that's a really good first step where they go on our trips and then they can realize that, oh, like entrepreneurship's really cool. I can have a really big impact, and maybe they start their own venture down the road.
So how long is like, let's say I'm a student who's interested in going to your like participating in your program for when COVID, gets better and everything gets better. How long is usually this trip like for?
Yeah, so we focused on kind of the short term experiences. So there, it's about a 10-day trip right now. And that's really where we've started. So each university does it a little bit different, just depending on kind of what their structure is. So some of the universities we work with, it's tied into a semester long class where the students are learning about entrepreneurial topics throughout the semester, kind of getting prepped to travel to Uganda. Others, it's more of kind of like a study abroad course where you maybe meet like once a week and really just do kind of that cultural preparation, the travel preparation. So it varies a little bit in terms of like what that pre-departure stuff looks like. And unfortunately, no university is the same, so we've had to kind of just adapt and be flexible. But yeah, so it's about a 10-day trip and then kind of fit into the academic calendar depending on what the semester looks like. And obviously, every university is on a different semester as well, whether it's trimesters, semesters, May terms, J terms, I don't know, craziness. But
So you mentioned earlier the training. Of course, now because of COVID, it kind of gets harder to work with training and so on. But usually in a non-COVID world or pre-COVID time, what does that training consist of? Like you bring the students over there. Like how does it work? How do you help educating about Kinosol and its innovation and so on?
yeah, so we started our community trainings actually a couple years after we started Kinosol because we realized when we started, we were just relying on our partners with nonprofits, other organizations to do all of that training. And so it really wasn't effective. I don't think people were understanding the product fully. They didn't see the potential in it. So then we put together this entire training curriculum in terms of understanding how do we encourage people to think about food security? How do we encourage them to think about dehydration? So we spend a good chunk of the time talking about that. We go through best practices with the dehydrators. We show them like how do you use it? How do you set everything up? We do a lot of taste testing because a lot of people aren't familiar with like dried fruits and vegetables. We do some like cooking demonstrations showing them how to repurpose the dried fruits and vegetables. Most of the time, the dried fruits they just eat, but vegetables are really not that great to eat dried. So you typically rehydrate them. Um, and then the afternoon is spent on a lot of kind of basic business training. So we've kind of taken the approach we want these community trainings, like we want them to be educational, but we also want them to be beneficial. So even if someone comes to the community training and isn't a farmer or doesn't end up getting a dehydrator or purchasing one, they can still take something away from it. And so through all of our time in the communities, one of the biggest things we realized is the lack of basic business skills. Like honestly, even just like basic accounting. You talk to a farmer or a small fruit stand, fruit and vegetable stand owner, and they can't tell you how much they spend every day buying their products. They can't tell you how much they make. They don't keep track of inventory. And so there's no clear way for them to get kind of past this day-to-day living. And so we spend a lot of time kind of focusing on doing a lot of that vision planning and thinking about, where do you want to be a year from now? And like, let's work backwards from there and think about what you have to do to actually get there. So it's honestly just a lot of kind of basic business planning, but also just some of that financial and accounting incorporated into that. And so when we do those trainings year round, so we have local staff in Uganda who help manage that, but we've taken a kind of a train the trainer approach. So when we look at working with a community, we try to identify kind of the main 5 to 6 community leaders, or we'll work specifically with like a women's group and they'll have kind of the main leaders from that group come. And so we'll do a smaller training with, maybe 10 or 15 people. And then they kind of go out and replicate that training, and they'll train their neighbors. And it's probably not quite as beneficial, but then in terms of like the content, because they're relaying a lot of the information. But what we found is that really does help improve the adoption rate, because you're hearing the information from someone you know and you trust, and they're excited about the product. And then to kind of help with mitigating some of that adoption, our local staff does like check-ins. So we'll do like monthly check-ins just to see if there's questions, understand how things are working. That's how we collect a lot of our impact numbers, and get a lot of that really great data. And so when we take the students, they have the opportunity to help us spend a day or two, depending on what the schedule ends up looking like, participating and helping kind of co-lead one of those sessions. But then we also have them kind of do their own sessions, not necessarily around the food dehydrators, more kind of on the business side of things. So the group that we took, the last group that we took in November 2019, they were working with a women's group. So the women's group basically gave them a presentation, and they're like, here are the things we're struggling with, here are our challenges. And then the students were able to just kind of go in and tackle that and really help them think through a lot of their sales and marketing strategy, and help them create like actionable steps to take to improve their sales. So it's kind of a little bit of both, in terms of understanding, or the students getting to experiences our training, but then they also get to kind of model their own. It's a little bit different, but really that more business consulting side of things.
We spoke about partners before. Aside of like businesses, who else can like become a partner, or who else can like help support your mission?
Yeah, in terms of partnerships, for a lot of our trainings, we work with a lot of nonprofits, local businesses, specifically in Uganda. But we have had various partners here in the US. So whether it's businesses or individuals that want to sponsor a dehydrator and help subsidize the cost, we've worked with organizations like that, or universities as well. And we're always open to anyone kind of reaching out, wanting to collaborate. If you've got an idea, we're more than happy to chat with you about what that would look like. So in our mind, we're pretty open to any type of partnership. It just kind of has to make sense for our mission. So whether that be, working with an organization that wants to take a trip and have their staff go, like that's something we'd be totally open to, or working with nonprofits here that are focused on food security. The hard part about the dehydrators is because there's no electricity or solar panels, it's a little bit more seasonal here in the US than it is over in Uganda, since they're right on the equator. So most of the time, the dehydrator, like here in Iowa, we'll use it over the summer. And that's how we've done a lot of our testing, which has been really great. But obviously, you have a very limited window in terms of sunny, warm months that you can use it in. You have a little bit more if you go southern Texas, California, Arizona, New Mexico. But that is like one of the challenges in terms of bringing the product here and really furthering that impact and having a bigger impact here in the US.
What do you see, in like 5 years, and what do you see for your organization in 10 years?
Yeah, I think had you asked me that pre-COVID, the answer would probably be very different. My goal would be in 5 years, like travel really is kind of back to where it is, and we can almost resume operations to what they would have been pre-COVID.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, this year we were supposed to be taking 4 trips with 4 different universities. We were going to be over in Uganda. We were going to be doing a whole bunch of new pilot projects in Tanzania, and so obviously all of that has been put on hold, kind of indefinitely.
Yeah.
Um, and this may be more like realistic side of me, but I think it's going to be quite a long time before travel is actually back, and especially getting to developing countries, it's a little bit more difficult. Um, so I will be pleasantly shocked if we have any trips in 2021. I think it'll probably be 2022. So my goal would be in 5 years we could be back and kind of actually fully operational, if not increasing our operations and the impact and the work we're doing. Um, that being said, kind of 10 years down the road, our goal has always been, how do we reach 1 million people with our food dehydrators? And then I would really love to scale and be working with university partners across the US, and have some type of ambassador program or social impact fund tied to our trips, where we can help the students that go on our trips and they want to start their own business. We could provide some of that early stage capital to kind of help them get up and going. Um, so there's a lot of like big ideas just down the road, but we kind of have to resume things, and that might be a while before that happens.
It sounds exciting though.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think everyone has kind of been thrown for a loop with 2020, and now we're all just kind of doing the best we can to adapt and continue forward.
Kind of bouncing off the of what Linda said. I I seen that you traveled throughout Mexico. Have you thought about bringing the dehydrator idea to here? Because I think it'd be a great idea. Like, there's a lot of communities that have high transportation costs, for example.
Yeah, and that's something we would love. So like down the road, we've also talked about how do we create kind of like regional hubs. So we've really focused on Uganda. A lot of it has to do with like the climate conditions, but the other part of it really is just the strength of the local partners we've been able to build out and having kind of that local team on the ground and having those partners that really were those really early champions and were really pushing for things. So I think if we're able to kind of replicate that model and we would love to expand out across Latin America, across Asia. It just comes down to kind of identifying and building those relationships with people on the ground.
Speaking of locations, we mentioned like Mexico and so on, but where else are you? Where were you able to bring the Kinosol's type of technology?
Yeah, so we have dehydrators in over 50 countries. We have not been to all 50 countries ourselves. So that was through a lot of various partnerships with whether it be churches, aid organizations, nonprofits. So that's how we did a lot of our really early testing, and we were able to get a lot of really good data understanding different climates, different environments, different altitudes. So that was really cool. Um, in terms of where founders have actually been to work with kind of partners and team members on the ground. Most of our operations in Uganda. We've got a couple of pilots going in Tanzania. We've had co-founders go to Brazil to work with some of our partners there. And I've also been to Thailand to work with a couple partners there on the ground. Um,
Cool.
kind of like very early. So like that's been really cool in terms of being able to have some really unique travel experiences, and build relationships with communities and families kind of across the world, which is cool. Um, and so I'm hoping once things kind of get back and going, we could really start to expand and kind of take that model and really replicate it across some of those locations where we already have some initial partners. It's just then how do we continue to expand and grow on those partnerships?
Well, that was very interesting, and I have to say the work that you all have done so far, it's quite impressive. Here in 50 countries, it's really a big number, and especially for like how the idea started.
Yeah.
So I, it's there's nothing else to say aside of like good job. But I think that's pretty much it. You basically cover all our questions, unless you guys have follow-up questions.
No, that's about it for my questions. But yeah, like I think it's like so cool how you went from such a small group and really just through all these business contests and you guys really took grab onto those opportunities and make a like your vision into a reality, and now you guys are expanding like every year. So it's like it's very exciting, and it I would love to see more universities and young people help you guys out in the future, and hopefully Kinoso will be like a huge thing in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I would like that.
And honestly, because I love traveling, I wouldn't mind to like help out in the project too, like be physically there. Hopefully one day, after COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, please stay in touch and reach out if you guys have any questions. But yeah, I will. If and when things kind of get up and going, I don't think we'll really know anything till mid 2021. But Yeah,
Yeah.
our trips, even though we do partner with specific universities, a lot of them are open to other students joining, and we can always kind of figure something out if you guys are ever interested in traveling on one of the trips.
All right. So thank you so much again for your time today. We really appreciate it. It was not a pleasure, it was an honor talking to you. Your time is very precious. So we appreciate this and for making precious this interview with us.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
you
much.
guys,
Thanks for responding to all of our emails too. Thank you.
no problem. I'm glad we got the chance to chat, and thanks for reaching out.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yep. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You
Thank you,
too.
you too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.